All right, we are back for our next session. So give me a second and please welcome, let's see, Dr. Akilah Cadet. You are now a co-host. And then we are also going to welcome Dr. Angela Young. You are also now a co-host.
Hello.
Welcome. Welcome. I'm going to turn
Thank
it to
you.
you too.
We're so excited to be here. Can we just take a moment to applaud Greer and Jess for just doing a wonderful job with this inaugural conference, summit gathering? It's a big deal. So thank you for doing this for us, for our disabled community, our accomplices and advocates of our community as well. Thank you. Thank you. We are excited to be in conversation with Dr. Angela Young. And before we get into our content, let's just do some intros. So, Dr. Angela Young, I'll let you take it away for your intro and image descriptions.
Thank you, Dr. Cadet. I appreciate that. And before we begin, I would like to just take a moment to acknowledge what the people of Jamaica are going through today, and have gone through last night. So as we are here, in this space celebrating what it means to be accessible, just please keep in mind all of the people who are impacted by the weather, due to, restrictions and limitations that come as being someone who is disabled and possibly not being able to, get out of harm. So just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that. There's a lot of people suffering today, and we want to hold space for that. So this kind of goes into intersectionality. This goes into exactly what we're going to be talking about today, and it goes into exactly what this conference is about. So for myself, I am, queer. I am non-binary. I use they, them pronouns. I am also deaf, and I am also multiply disabled. I joke with people that I keep the list of my disabilities on my phone because I cannot remember them all, but it's actually true. There are 21 of them, and I can't remember all of my conditions, so I keep them on my phone. So every time I go to a new doctor or a new specialist, I usually present them with a one pager pertaining to the rare diseases that I have, the things that they're probably not going to know about because if this is something that's occurring, one in 400,000, then I'm probably the only person they'll ever meet, with that condition. So, through all of these intersectional lenses, I approach accessibility strategy, and my work lives at the intersection of disability, and queerness and education. I started my career in teaching, K to 12 and higher ed, and then I lead accessibility training now across a major enterprise organization, and every piece of my identity informs how I build systems of inclusion. And these systems of inclusion aren't abstract ideals, they're something that are human, and that are practical and that we can actually live successfully. So, Dr. Akilah, please take it away.
Yeah, well, as a Caribbean person, what we just saw from Dr. Angela Young is that you can use your platform and your privilege in any space or place to talk about folks who are oppressed. So I really, really appreciate that. It was excellent role model. We didn't even plan this. The world is ending. But anyway, hi, Dr. Keela Cadet here. I am the founder and CEO of Change Today. I'm located in Oakland, California. I'm seated in my office with my wonderful book behind me, White Supremacy is All Around, Notes from a Black Disabled Woman in a White World. And then my portraits of my dog, who has since passed, behind me. I have long golden braids that hang on my white t-shirt that you can buy that says you can use your spoons for ice cream around my actual hand and ice cream for the spoons that I've given myself as disabled folks, as chronically ill folks who need to pour back into ourselves. My pronouns are bad bitch. Otherwise, she, her, that works as well. And I am excited to be in conversation. So before we get to our first question, I don't want to brag, but I also have my comorbidities in my phone and it's at 22. So do better, Dr. For those of you who may or may not know, I do have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. It's a rare connective tissue disorder. I have a rare type of the 13 types. I have myopathic Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. It has fucked my life in the best way. I am able to have a rare version of rare things, but it's allowed me to be more affirmed in my purpose. I also have other things going on that make me a wonderful, beautiful, stunning disabled baddie. So as we are thinking about intersectionality that Dr. Young set up so well, um, I would like to just share what my definition of intersectionality is and then pass it on to Dr. Young. So we can't talk about intersectionality without talking about Kimberly Crenshaw. She coined this term, a Black woman, in 1989. And it's about the intersections of our identity that relate to how we are treated systemically in society, spaces, places, and around people. So what does that look like? Dr. Young and I have already shared parts of intersectionality, but I am a Black person, I am a woman, I am disabled. I am homeowner. I'm a business owner. I'm a twin. I'm all of these things that add to who I am, my intersectionality. So another way to think about it is if you're in a bus and everyone in America is on this bus and we're going down the street, in the first intersection are people who make less than $50,000, they would have to get off. If the next intersection is women, they would have to get off. The next intersection is LGBTQ plus folks, they would have to get off. The next intersection is disabled, they would have to get off. Eventually, at the end of that destination for that bus, we would have heterosexual, cisgendered, non-disabled, um, privileged white guys that have the most power. And it's important to acknowledge that because our intersectionality, which can be a form of oppression, is the reason why it's hard for us to be seen, validated, heard in workspaces and places, as well as the health environments that we're in too. And so that is just my take of intersectionality, or intersections of what makes us wonderful and beautiful and great, but also relates to a lot of oppression. Dr. Young, what does intersectionality mean to you?
First of all, I'm so glad you called out that this term was coined by a Black woman, Kimberly Crenshaw. Unfortunately, when we tend to utilize terminology or we think about concepts, we don't really go back to the root of where they occurred, and that is so necessary. Um, you know, Intersectionality really is, for me, is, the the framework of what you can't see. So, when you look at someone, like if you look at me, I am a white person with side shaved, curly purple hair. And when you look at me, you just see somebody with side shaved, curly purple hair. But what you don't see are all of the ways that my identities are intersectional. So, I'm Greek and I'm queer, which if you know anything about being Greek, those two really don't go together. I was raised in a very strict religious home, so I have a background in religious trauma. So those are all things that come together as layers that we don't really think about, when we're interacting with people in a corporate space or in a professional space or in even personal spaces. We're not thinking about all of the layers through which they are seeing something, through which their perspective is shining through, because they have all of these ways and methods that they need to unpack what they're receiving, the information they're receiving, right? The information all of us receive, or what's being said to us, or what we're experiencing, or what we're seeing go on, right, as the world is on fire right now. So we are processing all of these things through our layers and our perspectives, and that really is, what intersectionality is about. And it's also really beautiful, and it's also really illustrative of the human experience. I mean, if we were all the same person, or if we had all the same experiences, that would be, there would be no innovation. There would be nothing new. There would be no creativity, right? We wouldn't be putting beautiful things out into the world. And, every day people with different perspectives and different voices are putting things out into the world, in beautiful ways, like this conference, right? We all came together, the creators and the people on the steering committee for this conference, because we all recognize that while we have 1,000 different differences, we have something similar, which is that we've all been silenced, right? And we've all been told to sit down, and we've all been told to shut up, shut up, shut up, all of it, right? And hey, when I make a mistake, if it's funny, I elevate it because it's funny. So um, what we recognize is that if we're experiencing it, other people are experiencing it, right? Other people are seeing what it's like to be told to sit down, and to shut up. And the joke I have with my family is, tell Dr. Young to sit down and see how loud they get, right? Because, that's the first thing that happens with me is if you tell me to be quiet, I get really, really loud on purpose in as many ways as possible. So, in this rambling answer, intersectionality really is the framework that allows us to see the full picture of a person's lived experience. And that's what we're amplifying and celebrating throughout this event.
So I'm curious to know, like, how has intersectionality showed up for you in your workspace? What does that look like? Do you have a story to
Oh,
share, an example?
you know, um, ultimately, it really shows up in the assumptions that people make. I speak and I read lips, so people forget that I'm deaf. But if I could tell you my story about what it's like to be deaf when you're Greek, and if you don't know this, when you're Greek, if you don't,
Looks like we lost Dr. Young. They'll be
Okay,
back, I'm
Dr. Young
sure.
will be back. Well, I'll tell you a little story while we wait for
Oh,
Dr.
they're
Young to come
back.
There they
back.
are.
You're
There
back, you're
they
back, you're
are.
back. Oh,
They're
there you
back.
are.
Right
I'm
there.
so sorry. I don't know what happened. All of a sudden, my Zoom was just gone.
Well, I mean, we're here for the drama, so keep going. You're talking about being Greek.
Right. So when you're Greek, you ignore things that don't make sense to you or that you don't like. So when
Or aren't you supposed to put Windex on it?
yes, or you're
Yeah.
supposed to put Windex on it. Exactly. So if you haven't seen my Big Fat Greek Wedding, you need to watch it tonight. There's your rethinkability homework. Talk about intersectionality. You'll love that movie. So, and it takes place in Chicago. So, Greer, if you haven't watched that, you need to get on that. Okay, so, you know, let's go back to the assumptions, right? The assumptions that people make. And uh, that's really how intersectionality shows up at work for me. People are making assumptions about what I am able to do or what I am able not to do, and they're forgetting that honestly, one of our superpowers for being disabled is that we have ways of getting around things. We don't see things as a blocker. We just see things as something that it's a challenge that we have to overcome. So um, when I feel left out, it is a constant reminder that visibility doesn't always mean understanding, but it also shows up in community because I have people on my team that will say, "Hey, I noticed the captions weren't on for this meeting. Do you want me to ask the organizer to turn the captions on?" Or if someone uses incorrect pronouns for me, they'll say, "Hey, Dr. Young's pronouns are they, them." So that moment right there, that's intersectionality in motion. So it's not about grand gestures, it's just about people seeing each other fully, even when as a society we're kind of taught not to, we're kind of taught to conform. We're kind of taught to, make sure that we're not taking up too much space or we're not making people uncomfortable, right? And I used to apologize for being deaf. I used to say, "Hey, I'm really sorry, I'm deaf. If you could speak up or if you could pull your mask down like during COVID, that would be really great. I'd really appreciate that." And I came at it from a place of, "I'm so sorry I'm inconveniencing you." But as the incredible, majestic Royal Highness Sonia Renee Taylor says, our bodies are not an apology, right? Like I don't need to apologize for being deaf or for being queer or for being tired or for being in pain or whatever. I come at my team and I let them know what my needs are for that day. And I am so fortunate to be on a team of entirely neurodiverse professionals who understand these things. But even if I weren't on a team of people like that, I would hope that what I'm mirroring is something, or modeling is something that other people can mirror, or other people can say, "Hey, you know what? I can speak up about my needs because Dr. Young did." That's the ultimate goal, right? It's modeling, and inclusivity in action, really. So,
100%.
with that,
Yeah.
I mean, we just talked about, right, how we come at professional spaces where we try to put ourselves in boxes and look as normal as possible, right, Dr. Cadet? I'm sure you've done the same thing. So
A little bit.
I want to ask you, because we are both people who suffer from chronic illnesses and chronic pain. So
Yeah.
invisible and, dynamic disabilities and chronic illnesses, they all pose challenges for folks who look normal, right? Because we know that 85% of the disabled population experiences an invisible disability. So what advice would you have for people who feel like they have to look normal or feel that kind of pressure to fit in?
Well, I think it's important to share that I'm dynamic, meaning I have visible and invisible disability. Everywhere I go, I'm a baddie, but sometimes it's with a cane or a neck brace. So someone could have a cue that's there. But even with a full-on bedazzled cane or a cane that says MF Boss, people will always say, what happened? And I respond with, I'm disabled. And they do not know what to do because I usually look cute or have a great outfit on, or I'm doing something and I'm functioning, and heaven forbid I smile or laugh, right? They can't understand how I could be disabled, right? So I have the privilege of going between visible and invisible disability, hence dynamic disability. But I also have to acknowledge that I have educational privilege and I have pretty privilege. So when being pretty, you can get away with so many things. It's not fair, but I use it to my advantage. Being a doctor, I can get away with so many things. I use it to my advantage. For those of you who may not know, my doctorate is in health science, actually from a med school, non-clinical, and leadership and organizational behavior. All three of my degrees are in health. Huge nerd here. So I'm very knowledgeable. But one way to kind of talk about how this can show up in the workplace, I was booked to do a talk for this startup company called Salesforce. I think they're going to make it. And I was asked to speak at a conference about inclusion specific to women. So when I arrived and I filled out the form and did all the things of what they needed to know for me, um, when I arrived to the venue with my cane, there were only stairs because it was this beautiful kind of painted ladies' home in San Francisco, California. The venue was up a long ass flight of stairs, no elevator, no nothing. Now I'm at a conference about inclusion and I was excluded. I'm obsessed with the vintage collection too. I was excluded. So I was like, hey, or is there elevator? Blah, blah, blah. They're like, no, oh my gosh, we're so sorry. Panic just on the face. So I slowly went up the stairs. Now, I bring this up because the venue of the main stage was upstairs, but the food and the drinks were downstairs. So how, what? Right? There's a little cafe upstairs, but like the lunch and the main stuff was downstairs. So then I sit and I wait for my time to go on stage. The stage also only had stairs. Oh, sorry, the stage didn't have stairs. It was just the stage. You just had to get up there yourself. No stairs. So, I get myself on the stage. I'm sure some of you have done it before. It's a sit down and just kind of just wing your legs over right to the side and then hope no one's looking at, you know, my glorious ass as I get up. So I sit down and we're talking about inclusion. And I'm asked a question about intersectionality and how important it is to support women and being funded and tech and all this other stuff. And I said, for example, I was booked to speak here today and I'm openly disabled. Everyone knows I'm disabled. It's out there. And no one asked for my accommodations. People cared more about my food accommodations than the accommodations I needed in the space. So immediately at that moment in time, Salesforce was incredibly apologetic. They wanted to dote on me and help me. But I use that because when people see this body, they don't equate that with disability because the messaging in the world is a person who uses a wheelchair or a person who is deaf or a person who is visually impaired, right? It's not me. They don't see someone like me. They don't see someone who's dynamic. And it leaves me out of the equation. So I'm not thought in those situations. And so the advice that I have for folks is if you can ask what fucking food people can eat, then you can ask their other accommodations. Food preference is great. That's also can be tied to chronic illness. It can also be tied to disability. That is important. I'm not saying don't do that, but extend it into the space. Second is if you ask for what is needed for people to feel welcome and valued into the space of everyone, then you can prepare. But here's the thing, you have to actually do it. I can't tell you how many times where people are asking for accommodations. And I'm like, I would appreciate having a padded seat. And there's no padded seat. There's no follow-up. There's nothing. So you actually have to do what you are doing in that space. And then third, if you are privileged to be in a position where you're non-disabled or you have invisible or dynamic disability, you can use your power and privilege to remind folks to think about those who may need the support or the accommodation in the space. So with that said, we are in positions where we have to exhaustively advocate for ourselves while simultaneously advocating for others to be further compounded by being forgotten, even when there has been acknowledgement of what needs to be done in the space. And so that whole part can be incredibly, incredibly tricky. So, Dr. Young, my question to you is what do you think organizations, spaces, and places are missing when it comes to accommodation? And how can they support the learning and unlearning needed to support and live with those chronic conditions or disabilities? For those who may not know, learning is what we're all doing here today. Unlearning is a little bit harder. Learning you've done in school or from your parents, and that's how you learn how to be ableist or racist or a wonderful, helpful person, right? But the unlearning is, wow, my parents did teach me, or my caretakers did teach me how to be ableist or racist. So I want to unlearn that behavior. So we're learning and unlearning today. So what are those things that are missing when it comes to accommodation, and how can they be supported for learning and unlearning for folks with chronic illness or disability in the workspace? Dr. Young.
It's one word, really. I mean, they're missing the why. So too many companies are saying, accommodations are paperwork. This is something you request. You need an accommodation, send an email, fill out paperwork. Paperwork is very cold. It's impersonal, right? So when you request an accommodation, it's seen as, what do I need to do to fulfill this thing? What do I need to do to get this piece of paper off my desk, right? What do I need to do to check this box, to check this off my list? So people aren't seeing accommodations as something you deserve. But accommodation is culture. It's how we say as people, hey, I see that you're here and I want you to stay here. I want you to be able to, thrive in this space. So we need to unlearn the idea that access is reactive. Access is not reactive. Access should be something that everybody deserves from day one. It's proactive, right? You would never go to a movie theater and sit through an entire movie with movie theater ticket prices the way they are and crappy, shitty movie theater food prices the way they are, and sit there and be like, I couldn't hear anything for this entire 2.5 hour movie, and the movie was great. Like you would never do that. That's insane, right? We would never do anything like that or expect anyone to do anything like that. But yet, people who come to work every day where their accommodations aren't being met, they are sitting through 8 hours, not just 2.5 hours of a crappy movie, but 8 hours of a crappy movie. And not only is it a crappy movie, but when you're at a movie theater, you can get up and leave when you want to, right? When you're at work, you can't do that. So, basically you're sitting in this environment where you're stuck, and I don't want to use certain phrases about, other places where you could be stuck in a box where you can't get out. But, basically, work is you're stuck there for 8 hours. If you can't do your 8 hours, then you have to make up that time, right? If you only worked 36 hours this week because you're not feeling well, what's the first thing on your mind? Oh God, when can I make up this time? Right? So, organizations aren't saying that, hey, we're going to give you what you need immediately. Most organizations wait for someone to ask, but I've got news for you. If you're an inclusive organization, you're not waiting until people ask. You're designing the flows around your organizations, both digitally and in the built environment, whatever those processes and protocols and environments look like, you're designing them already with the assumption.
Oh, we're on a flow. But Zoom is just zooming today. There we
There
go.
they are.
Welcome back.
There they are.
I have words I'd like to say, but I'm not going to. I don't know what is going on with my Zoom today, and I am so sorry. I really don't know what's going on.
Apology rejected. It has nothing to do with you. We're here for
Okay,
the drama. The
so
rant was good. Keep going.
okay, I'm not done yet. Yeah, I'm like halfway through. Okay. The other thing I want to say is, and actually Zoom's probably like, you know what? Shut up. So
What do you mean?
the
Because
other
Zoom got rid of
thing,
all their DEI and they don't care about us anymore?
so Zoom is modeling what not to do. No. Okay, so I will not be silenced, Zoom. I will not be silenced. Okay, so the other thing I want to say is that you do not owe anyone proof of your pain or your disability. Okay, I used to come with receipts every time I came to a new job or a new space or whatever. I used to pull out my like resume, right? Of all my chronic disabilities and of everything I was going through, and trying to prove why I needed accommodations. It ain't nobody's goddamn business. It's nobody's business. Okay. So, like, at organizations, you need to come into a new role or stepping into a new organization, you come in your own self knowledge. So you anchor yourself in your own self knowledge. Don't worry about what others understand or don't understand or believe or don't believe. Learn your patterns, learn your limits, and then you name what helps you succeed. And that's not weakness, that's wisdom and advocacy, straight up.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
if someone's saying to you, you don't look disabled, access isn't about how you look, it's about how you live. So no matter what you look like, that's not access. I'm sitting here today with a face full of, what my dear friend Sam Evans calls corporate drag. So I'm sitting here today with my makeup on and my hair's done and I've got my favorite jacket on. You know what's on the bottom? A pair of like my inside sweatpants, not even my outside sweatpants, okay? But my inside sweatpants and my Coach slippers because they make my feel warm and fuzzy and I love them. It was one of my splurges last year, right? I deserved Coach slippers. So damn it, I bought Coach slippers. So anyway, so you know what? You do what you need to do. There you go. All right, look, since we're holding up slippers, I'll take mine off too. See? Oh, well, I got my screen on, so it's hard to see.
Oh.
But you know what? We come here with the wisdom of knowing what we need and knowing that we are important enough, Sonia Renee Taylor again, right? Because we're not an apology. So we're important enough to ask for what we need. Like,
100%. Yeah.
and honestly, if you ask someone for something that you need and they say no, like, really, are we going to deny people what they need? Seriously? Like that, because then what, right? So, this leads into something I want to ask you, Dr. Cadet, is we just talked about, coming in wisdom and understanding what you need. So, what are some ways that once folks realize what they need and have the wisdom to understand their limitations, how can people advocate for themselves through leveraging their intersectionality? What would that look like?
So I use a lot of that was fantastic. If anyone wants to know, my slippers are Frida Salvador, a wonderful brand. They're based here in the Bay, women owned. I love them. Um, there's so many things from what you said. I am going to focus on how to use your intersectionality. One thing I'm really great on is being petty when provoked. So I like to use my tools and resources to help people learn and unlearn. And I can do that because I'm a doctor. And it's ridiculous in America. When you're a doctor, people listen to whatever you say because 3%, right? Um, and 3% of people have a doctorate. Now, when I am in a position where people feel that I'm less than, I use my power and privilege for good. And that's what I mean by this pettiness. I use it for humor, but I'm using my power and privilege for good. So, for example, I have a Substack right now that says 2 million reasons why ableism is here to stay. Because I pissed off, because I pissed millions off as a disabled person who walks and has an advanced degree, but anyway, I'm in vogue. In that article, I talk about all the ways I was discriminated against on a work trip at the airport. And I use that for an example. I also have Instagram posts that goes along with it. And I have some beautiful gems on there. Um, it's all rooted in me being a professional victim and a complete burden to society and making sure that nature is trying to remove me from the gene pool. But my favorite is I'm sorry you're disabled. That sucks. But you need to stop expecting the world to change for you and instead need to be learning how to live in the world around you. And I bring that up because our disabled bodies, our chronically ill bodies are not the problem. It's the systems, the structures, the people, the spaces and places that are the issue. So what does that mean? You have to tap into your intersectionality to know how to use it for good. Again, I have this whole doctor thing that's very helpful. And so I will be in a position where I will write this article. I will be in a position where I will use storytelling to help people understand the situation of what they're going in. If people feel that they want to relate to my storytelling because of how I look or how I move in the world, and that helps them, fine. But what you really want to know is, what of my intersectionality can I use for the greater good? What tools do I have to be able to come in and advocate for yourself? Because here's the thing about being disabled or chronically ill. You're never advocating for just you. You're always advocating for the entire disability and or chronic illness community, because they view us as a monolith, which is why they're very confused that Dr. Young and I are disabled individuals, because again, we don't fit the bill. So figuring out how you can champion yourself, use your words, use your language for good. Now, I'll leave you with this fun little thing. I unfortunately am single and I don't like it. And so dating is very fun. And I think dating is a wonderful way to practice how to use your intersectionality with chronic illness and disability. I went on a date and the guy said, unfortunately, like men, the guy said, I'm not transphobic, but I went on a date with someone that I thought was trans. I had a wonderful time, but like, I don't want to date a trans person. And I said, well, you know how you know you're transphobic? He's like, that's just not fair. And I said, well, surprise, I'm disabled. And I don't have that in my dating profile. And I don't have it in my dating profile because just like trans people, harm can happen. You can be othered, you can be left out, and people have to feel supported. It's not necessarily about safety, because safety can be kind of a moving thing, but it's like you have to feel supported to share something. And because you're talking about someone who has every right to share all parts of their intersectionality, and you are viewing it as a negative thing, let's see how you're going to handle it right now. And so he was like, how are you, what, how, I don't, what, how, and stuck on his words. How are you disabled? Can I ask that? Like, and I said, no, you can't. But for teaching purposes, for you to learn and unlearn, I am disabled. Here's what I have. And I don't share that because I don't want someone to think less of me. I don't want someone to think I can't do the job of being the girlfriend, or, you know, in the workplace, that I am less than, that I'm not smart, that I'm not independent, all these other negative stereotypes that happen. But I use this example because they were causing harm to another group, and I was able to soften the moment. And then, of course, the guy like walked in my car and tried to lean in for a kiss, and I said, "Ew!" And then I realized I said it out loud, and I said, "Oh no, have a great day," and never saw him again. But I used that as an example of how I use my intersectionality in the moment to advocate for myself and whomever he may date in the future. He did go on to say, like, I've dated neurodivergent people because he wanted an award of he's a good person, right? But those are the ways in which we have to do it. If you look at my book, right on the cover, I purposely chose to make sure that I was using a cane. I wasn't using a cane at the moment. I always have a cane with me too in my car because I'm a Virgo. But I wanted to do that. I didn't have to. I could have just sat in my pretty privilege on the cover, but I wanted people to know I'm stylish and also disabled. On the cover and the subtitle, I have my intersectionality right there. Notes from a Black disabled woman in a white world. Again, using my privilege. And so it's some trial and error. It's figuring out who your champions are, figuring out where, you know, your sweet spot is and your comfort. Use it in spaces and places from work, family, friends, in the world. So with that, I'm wondering, with the weight that we carry as chronically ill, chronic pain, disabled, or combo platter of those things, it's important that we have grace. But why, Dr. Angela, is it important that we have grace with this advocacy and constant learning and unlearning that we have to do in the workplace?
You know, we need to grow through grace. And if we're not growing through grace, then what we're doing is we're growing through shame. Because if we're not giving people grace, then they are feeling ashamed for what it is that they are disclosing to us, that they don't have to, by the way, right? So grace doesn't let things slide. It's not about saying, oh, that's okay, never mind. You don't need to give me an accommodation. It's saying, hey, you know what? I know you can do better, and I believe you will. And this is a learning process for all of us, and we're going through this together. Um, you know, I've learned that real inclusion work does not live or situate itself in perfection. It situates itself in repair. So it situates itself in the moments where we mess up and the moments where we take accountability and the moments where we keep showing up. Grace is what keeps the door open long enough for change to be able to walk through it. And the other thing I would add is that, intersectionality is your power source. It gives you perspective that others cannot see. So use that, use your lived experience as data, because as you go through your life, that is real world human data that you can use to shift conversations. And those open, empathetic conversations are what are going to lead to grace. So advocacy doesn't always have to look like a protest. I mean, yeah, no kings is flipping amazing, right? But sometimes advocacy is just a whisper or just a quick ask or, a quick line at the end of a one-on-one or at the end of a meeting or, asking questions instead of being judgmental. That's all advocacy. So you're still existing loudly in spaces that never expected you when you're advocating for yourself. Even if you're advocating quietly, your existence is loud, right? Because these spaces and these people in these spaces never expected you. They never saw you coming. So it's a reminder to yourself that advocacy can both be fierce and gentle. And that no matter how you advocate for yourself, they're all ways of survival, right? They're ways of you surviving, but I hate the corny term surviving and thriving, but it really does fit here. I hate that phrase though. Like I get an eye twitch when I hear people use that phrase. Um, but it really does fit here, because I mean, what's the phrase like fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. So okay, so
Wow, you
what's
did
going
what
on
the
then?
former president couldn't do. Good job.
So yeah, I'm keeping my mouth shut on that one. So but basically all the things you're thinking, I'm thinking, and probably more. So, what we're doing when we give grace is we're saying, okay, look, you made a mistake. We understand that you made a mistake. If it happens again, it's as I tell my children, if it happens again, it's not a mistake, it's a habit. And when it continues to happen, it's a habit. So you're showing me who you are through the way you iterate these mistakes, right? And the way you grow. It is a choice. Damn right, Jessica, it is a choice. Because we can make a mistake and say, oh my gosh, I am so sorry. I am really sorry. But if we're not changing our behavior and if we're not proving to that person that we value them, and that we validate them, then we're not making mistakes. We're showing who we are as people, right? And who we are as an organizational culture. I mean, if your organizational culture is not meeting you step by step with you requesting your needs or with you suggesting ways to be more accessible or ways to be more inclusive or ways to honor more intersectionalities, because newsflash, right? Being disabled is the only identity group that can exist in every other identity group out there. So
Hmm.
you can be disabled and queer, you can be disabled and Muslim, you can be disabled and Buddhist. You might not be able to be Muslim and Buddhist, right? Or Muslim and Christian or whatever. You might have identities that might be conflicts of interest, but being disabled can fit into any other identity group. And it's the only identity group that you can spontaneously enter and exit out of at any given moment, because we have things like situational disabilities, right? Temporary disabilities, permanent disabilities. So it's the only other identity group that every single one of us is going to be a part of at some point. Every single one of us, even if it's just aging, and I say just on purpose, right? Even if it's just through aging, every single one of us will be disabled at some point. So you know what? When you're not disabled, that's the time to advocate. When you're not disabled, that's the time to build those bridges and to bridge those gaps. Because what you're doing is you're not only advocating for your colleagues who are disabled, but you're also advocating for your future self and for the future selves of all the people around you, you know, on your team, in your family, your children, everybody. So when we can get inclusivity straightened out now, it's going to just make such a better future for everybody. And, you know, since we're talking about ways to be more inclusive at work, you know, and ways to be supportive through grace, Dr. Akilah, I would like to ask you, you know, what can leaders do to role model supportive behavior for people with
Yeah.
more intersectionality or through intersectionality?
Absolutely. Before I get into that, if anyone has a question, feel free to place it in chat. We are going to do a Q&A for the last 10 minutes of our time. And just noting that I see a question it's first in queue from Journey. Yes. So when we're thinking about what leaders can do specifically in the workplace, we are thinking about them doing the following things. How they act every day. Accountability, communication, and transparency. Accountability. Yes, I need to keep learning and unlearning about, uh, you know, workplace accommodations. Accountability. I said I would follow up on this request. I said that we would actually have process that makes sense. I would follow up on the denied request, right? So the accountability of following up on those actions. Communication. Communicating. Um, they don't know what they don't know because everyone doesn't know everything. And again, disability and chronic illness, it's not a monolith. The way in which we need accommodations, it's not the same for every single person. And so, fine, great. You have someone who's deaf or hard of hearing. I'm hard of hearing. So you're like, I got it. I have it figured out. But there's someone who may need more of something or someone who may not need something at all. Again, we are not a monolith. And then that transparency. I did not know that. I am sorry. Again, I am learning and unlearning accountability, communication, and transparency. It's doing that. But they have to be the ones when they act like that accountability, communication, and transparency. Then they're naturally role modeling the behavior that their other leaders should do and that their team should do or their staff should do. They are role modeling it so their actions and words are aligned. Now, we're here because a lot of people do have workplace accommodations. You know how I know? Because it's federally and state mandated. So there is that. But there's people who choose to not have their actions and words match. And it puts us into the situation where the chronically ill or disabled person is the problem or the victim or the burden. Newsflash, we feel that every day from our family, our loved ones, the systems and structures that we're in. So don't be a leader who adds to it. Be different, move different, show up, role model, act every single day. Now, with that said, going back to what I asked Dr. Young about earlier with grace, is that we have to give ourselves grace. The we means the non-disabled folks and the disabled folks and the chronically ill folks. We have to give ourselves grace because, again, we all collectively still don't know what we don't know. So we have to allow for apology. We have to allow for difficult conversations. We have to allow for communication to be there. And last, all of it involves vulnerability. We have to be vulnerable to share something, particularly those who have dynamic or invisible disability, to share this thing. And within that, we can connect and grow together. Now, leaders like to always say, I know everything. I am an executive coach too, so I let them think that for sure. But the way they know everything is being able to apologize, hold themselves accountable, and realize they don't know everything. And so if they're able to be vulnerable by saying, I don't know how to manage you, I don't know how to support you, you're going to need to educate me on what you have or what's going on, the better it is. So just checking to see if there are any other questions that are in here. I will open to the first one. Dr. Young, how do we empower people to ask for what they need within their workplaces?
That's a great question. And, you know, we can start small. Um, Notice who's shrinking themselves to fit in or who's constantly adapting. Start paying attention to that. Then say, what can I shift to make this space easier for them? So offer to turn on captions. Actually, you don't even need to offer, just do it. Turn on captions, right? Offer
Make it sexy.
flexibility.
Just do it just right when you get in there.
That's right. And offer flexibility. Make sure that you're pronouncing names correctly. Learn pronouns and mean it. We don't build inclusive culture through grand strategy decks or huge workplace initiatives, right? We build it through consistent and human choices because inclusion starts in these micro moments, and those moments are what add up to belonging. And I put something in chat that I really want to call out. Pay attention to who is holding the microphone at your organization. If your leader is the only one holding the microphone, then you need to find yourself a new leader that gives a microphone to everybody in the room, right? And on a team, if you're noticing that there are people who perennially never have a microphone, then you need to find ways to give them one. Find ways to amplify them, find ways to support them, find ways to support and normalize these inclusive behaviors of asking for accommodations, because that's what it really comes down to, right? Being disabled is being othered constantly. And Dr. Akilah said that at the beginning of our talk. So what we really need to do as organizations is make sure that we normalize all of these behaviors so it just becomes what we do. It's not anything different, it's just what we do.
I would say it's not really normalize them. It's integrating. It's making them foundational. It's making them part of like the daily, just the way we move. So when we have a Zoom meeting, captions are automatically on, unless there's a team or group decision that says we don't want them on, and everyone agrees with that, and everyone is accommodated in that way. It's just making sure that we're not the afterthought. Right. So an earlier talk today with Jim Lebrecht, the director, co-director of Crib Camp, he was talking about how we're in this position of like being an afterthought. We don't need that. We don't need that. We can just be able to include everyone in the space or place, because hear me out. The accommodations for disabled folks are preparing non-disabled folks for their temporary or certain future. So why not do it now? Just why not? But this is a whole other talk. There's a lot of fear. There is a Substack around fear and death and disability that I wrote about, but that's like a whole other talk. Another question that we have in here is, if you have people on a team who are neurodivergent and disabled, how would you go about discussing that they might want to look at applying for accommodations for both, since the accommodation for one doesn't always give them everything they need? Doctor, do you want to start with this one?
I'm going to let you take this one first because I'm still
Okay.
processing the question. Go ahead.
Yeah. Look at real-time role modeling happening right now. And so if you have two conditions and two wonderful things that make you amazing, part of it is prioritizing what you need, part one, and part two is also doing both at the same time. But again, you have to go back into your comfort level, because again, that V word, vulnerability, is there. There are spaces and places where people are becoming much more comfortable and confident around just sharing out loud. I'm neurodivergent, so I need X, Y, and Z, right? And so that may be the easier one out of the other one that may be a dynamic or invisible part of disability. The other thing is just, if you are someone who's in a space with non-disabled folks around you, having non-disabled folks in that group say, does anyone need accommodations, or what can I do to accommodate for the space, or send me an email, right? So I can make sure that this meeting we're prepared for X, Y, and Z, right? That also helps kind of make it easier to do the two combo, right? But again, it comes back to what is comfortable for you in that space to share. Now, ultimately, you don't know until you ask. And if I'm a big fan of just always asking. And if they say no from the beginning, then it's either figuring out another way to ask or Operation GTFO. If anyone doesn't know what that means, it's get the fuck out. Because, like Dr. Young is saying, if there's only one person carrying the mic, there's a lot of other cultural issues that are happening in that workplace. And so I rather know earlier on than to figure it out later. Even if you can't leave that job right away, it gives you an opportunity to figure out your own internal timeline of when you would want to exit or whom else you can look for in the organization to ask for what you need. Um, as we are at time, and I am a Virgo and I want to stay on it. What is, oh man, fuck it. I'm not going to end on time because this question by Mary is really great. Um, how do you navigate all that in a country where accommodations are being loudly discouraged by the admin and some companies are capitulating?
Okay,
Listen,
I got this one. I got
go,
this one.
go.
When I ask for accommodations, I frame them around the function rather than the condition that I have. So instead of saying I have X, Y, and Z diagnoses, I might say, here's what helps me focus, or, this setup would reduce fatigue. So that opens a collaborative door with HR or a manager instead of a diagnostic one. And, if you're managing intersecting conditions, you can document what patterns you're noticing. So if you notice that back-to-back meetings are triggering both sensory overload and your chronic pain, then you can request scheduling adjustments that address both. You don't have to justify your needs. You just have to articulate how the accommodations that you're requesting would help you show up fully. And that's not being extra, that's just asking for access, right? So
Yeah.
I love what you said about, prioritizing, because this really speaks to that. Access needs can shift. So some days, the sensory overwhelm is what the hardest part is, or some days it's the pain. So it's not about choosing all of your intersectional identities or having to prioritize one intersectional identity over another. It's about triaging um, what's most
Yeah.
impactful in this moment, while designing support systems that hold space for all the rest. So,
Well
when
said, Dr.
when it
Young.
thank you. When it
We're,
comes
we're
down
gonna,
to, we gotta stop, right? Okay, I'm sorry. We
yeah.
gotta stop. I know. All right, we
We
gotta
do,
stop.
we do have to stop, but that is a wonderful way to tie everything together. What I will tell everyone as we wrap up is that the world is fucked, but you aren't. You need to take care of yourself. Some of you are probably flaring more. Some of you are stressed out about your health insurance, whether it's public, private, it's part of the health benefit exchange, whatever it may be. What that means is that you have to prioritize yourself and put your needs first. You have nothing to lose when the country says you don't matter. So use your voice. Remember to use your spoons for yourself and for ice cream, and keep being amazing. Thank you, Dr. Young. Thank you, Greer. Thank you, Jessica. Passing it back to you.
Thank you all
That
so much.
was
We really appreciate you.
Yeah, this was easily one of my most anticipated sessions for the entire summit. So I'm so glad that we got to do this. I encourage you all to connect with Dr. Young and Dr. Cadet on LinkedIn. I shared Dr. Cadet's Substack as well. Dr. Young, if there's anything for you to share too, your book on using accommodate or creating accommodations is available on Amazon. So please follow up with that. We're going to dive into a really quick story now. So give me 1 second.